your girls, grab your beers.
Hey everybody, this is Charlie from Anthrax, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kalin listens to this all the time. Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now here's your host.
I am Monty Heath, so one Heath, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
Hey, what's up? It's John from Skillet, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle on Domain Cleveland Radio.
Fasten your seatbelts.
What's going on, everybody? It's Bill Bailey with today's Boondoggle. And a real quick housekeeping note, if you're watching us on YouTube or Rumble or BitChute or Odyssey, please hit that follow and subscribe button. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or iTunes or Google or any of the podcast platforms, please hit that follow and subscribe button. Help us build up our numbers so we can continue to bring you conversations like the one I'm about to have right now today with some men that are dishing out some dangerous new medicine, Mr. Jake Scherer and Handsome Dan, as I know him, Mr. Dan Garland.
Yeah, what up?
What's going on? All in like I think we're hitting like all the time zones too at the moment.
I think we are. We got the whole country, you know.
Yeah.
Well,
Dan's
Central.
the freshly woke one.
all right, you found it. You found one thing about California that isn't great. All right, I got to be up earlier than everyone. But
Yeah.
let's be real.
Yeah, East
I'm
Coast.
gonna-
I'm trying to point to Bill. Yeah, there you go. And then
Yeah.
West Coast,
Well,
Central.
Central. Nice. Well, hey, usually when I have people on for the first time, I like to get a quick background. So we'll start with Jake. But originally, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I seriously always wanted to be a rock star. That's it. I'm like, everyone's like, what was your backup plan? Did you go to college? You had nothing. When I was a kid, always. My only other thing I liked, really wanted to do was possibly be a pilot, which I still would like to get my pilot's license, but I just liked flying. But I was always like, my dad played in a band, and I just always wanted to do music. Seriously, that's all I've ever wanted to do. Never had another plan.
Nice. And how about you, Dan?
Being an actor, you know, I grew up doing like theater and commercials and just like I don't know. My dad was just like I was a model, a child model, and my dad was like a huge movie guy, so it's sort of a family thing. Just watching movies. I mean, I was like basically studying film as a kid, just my whole life, you know. My dad had like literally 500 VHS movies. We had a library of movies, and I would just study everything. So it was that, and then he had a huge record collection, and I just love movies and I love music, and that's all I've ever wanted to do, and I do both of those things.
Nice. And you guys like I mean, you said you had grew up in musical households and stuff, but you remember some of the artists or whatever that you heard that kind of like really reeled you in and kind of like, okay, this is where you felt like this is what I want to do?
Yeah, for me, I started by just listening to my dad. Like I said, my dad played in a band, and he listened to all this classic rock. And I think, you know, Dan and I's age and generation, we grew up when classic rock radio became so big, like in the 90s, when everyone was like, all of a sudden we're playing like Tom Petty and all those classic rock bands were huge. Like, so I grew up on a lot of classic rock. But then, and so my dad played all this. Leonard Skinner was the band that like I just loved, that my dad listened to. We just listened to them together, and I just loved Leonard Skinner. But then I would go off on my own and Led Zeppelin and all these other things. But the band that really changed it for me would probably be Nirvana, because I think I kind of listened to all this, whatever my dad listened to. And then also when I was like 12, 13, my friend was like, yo, check this out. It smells like Teen Spirit. And this is even after Kurt Cobain was dead. I'm, like this is probably like, I don't even know, 2000 or something. I don't know. But that's when I discovered Nirvana. And that's when for me, that changed it for me where I was like, oh, I don't want to just play music. I want to write my own songs because I like the idea that Kurt Cobain wrote his own songs and like made his own stuff up. And then Nirvana was like the center for me, I guess. Like, but then like all the lineage off of that. So like Queens of the Stone Age, Foo Fighters, like anything that was ever involved with Nirvana, that's kind of what started it for me. I don't even listen to Nirvana a lot now, but that was definitely the band that for a long time, like that's what sparked it for me.
I mean, I was just talking about this, I think, at dinner last night that I remember I must have been in 7th grade or 8th grade, but I remember watching Jake play with his band at like the talent show. You would have been in 6th or 7th grade, maybe.
Yeah.
I think you had long Kurt Cobainish sort of hair. You had long hair and you sang Nirvana. I remember.
Lithium.
Yeah. I just remember like, I played guitar at that point, but I didn't really have a band. But yeah, I mean, you see pictures of like Jake on stage with his dad's band when he's like 4, holding a guitar. Like they would just have him running around the stage.
Yeah, I just
not plugged in, just playing.
Hanging.
So he's like built for it. Like I come from like nobody in my family is really musical. My mom played a little bit of piano. But my family really encouraged it, but nobody did that, and for me, music, I mean, yeah, there was like the stuff, like I remember listening to like Boston records, which was cool because that was like one record I really loved, just the sound of those guitars and like the harmonies and stuff. And then when Jake and I started playing together in high school and we met this producer, who had this Grammy-winning producer in Minneapolis. He had like his first big job when he was 18 was he was an engineer on that Boston record.
Yep.
It's cool.
Mixing engineer. Yep.
Yeah. And then it was like, that, and then just discovering punk rock, when I was, and of course Nirvana and Green Day and stuff like that. I had an older brother, so I got onto a lot of that music as it was happening. And Rage Against the Machine and stuff like that. But for me, I like the Misfits and like Rancid and just everything punk rock. That's when I really picked up the guitar and started playing.
Nice. So. And then, so that's what I was going to ask too then. Like what around age group did you guys actually start learning instruments and playing yourselves? And then wanting to actually, I mean, you were running around with unplugged with your dad on stage, but when was it where you were actually running around plugged in with friends on stage?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I started on drums when I was about, I don't know, as soon as I could hit something, I had a Mickey Mouse drum set when I was like, I don't know, 4 or 5, something like that. Drums were my first instrument. And then I started piano lessons when I was like, I don't know, 1st, 2nd grade, something like that. And I hated piano lessons, but I'm glad I learned it now. I hated it at the time. And then when I was 12, I picked up guitar, and my dad played, and so he could teach me a little bit. But my dad doesn't know theory or anything. He just was like this. He knew like this is a G chord, this is an A chord. And he gave me the basics and then just said like, just do what I did, listen to the records and try to play along with them, and figure it out. And so that's what I did. And I think there was no let me just play guitar for fun for like a few years. It was literally like as soon as I could figure out how to play a song, I was like, I need a band now, like ASAP, and we need to book a show. I remember playing some girl's birthday party when I was like 12, and that was my first. It was not long after like barely learning guitar to like now we're playing shows. And we played a birthday party. I remember playing Purple Haze, Jimi Hendrix, and we were butchering it, but just Green Day, like When I Come Around, stuff like that. So I was about 12 when I started really, with guitar.
Nice.
Similar for me, like I started playing drums around like 9, and then someone gave my mom a guitar, like someone she worked with gave her this guitar, and then I at a local record store, our local record store down in the valley, I did like a raffle and I won a Fender. I remember I won this Fender and I brought it home, and like you could shake it and you could like hear shit like loose in it. So it was just all fucked up. Can I swear on here?
Yeah.
All right. It was all fucked up. And I was pissed off about it. So I smashed it. And then one of my mom's coworkers gave her a guitar and she gave it to me. I was really into punk rock. I was probably like, 12. And it was this it was a Dixon guitar. And I named it Sid. And I carved Sid into it because I was really into punk rock. And I just started playing along to the Misfits or, Anti-Flag or just whatever. It was like power chords. And I remember the first song I learned was Glycerine by Bush. Learned some Green Day, stuff like that. So right around the same age, but I wasn't really playing out. I mean, I think my first gig, I was probably 13, but again, just like, I never really sang and I just didn't do a lot of shows. I didn't really have a consistent band till I met Jake or till we started playing together in high school.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that story. You guys, you said you were watching Jake in a talent show, and how did you end up connecting and being like, "Hey, man, let's play together"? How did that come together with you guys?
Well, it's funny. It's kind of like two ways. One, like, I would always see Jake playing. He always had a band. He was always playing and everything. And then we had a mutual friend who had a band who was our first bass player in New Medicine. His name is Brady. And
Matt Brady.
And Jake's band. So it was Rise or Rust was Matt Brady's band. And then Jake had a band called Counterculture. And they would do shows all the time. So I'd go to their shows and I would sell T-shirts for Rise or Rust. So I was like the merch guy, and I'd always try to like find a band that way. And then Jake and I ended up, I knew I didn't want to go to college, and my senior year started, and I was like, I better start this band because I'm not going to go to college, and that's what I want to do. And we had a class together, and it was like first period in the morning, and I would just come in like I am not like half asleep, and Jake kept being like, let's start a band, dude, because all the guys that he was in a band with were a year older than me, so they had all gone off to college.
So the band was over.
Yeah, so suddenly he wasn't in a band for like once in his life, and he was like, maybe we should play music, we should start a band. And I was like, dude, I'm trying to sleep. You keep talking to me, and it's really annoying. And you just keep being like, yeah, dude, check out this band. Like we were in some computer class and we'd be on
tech. It was tech downstairs.
Tech class. Yeah, we'd be listening to MySpace bands and check this out. And I'd be like, dude, it's 10 a.m. I am sleeping.
Yeah.
Leave me alone.
Yeah.
And finally one night, I think I had a party at my mom's house, and he came over and he brought his guitar and started singing. And I was just like, I mean, I had seen him too, but we just started playing. I was like, damn. This dude can sing and write and play. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And we started, immediately writing.
Yep.
During class, after school. It was like we were on a mission from day one, and, and he had a focus, like Jake had a focus that I didn't really have. And I really was like, oh, okay. Like I tapped into that. I was like, okay. That's what focus is. I knew I loved doing it alone in my room, but to really like get together and write and like work on things on a consistent every day, it's like, okay, this is how you get things done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's about how I remember it as well. I had my band moved away, and I was like pissed. I was like, I can't believe you guys are gonna go to college. Like, what are you guys stupid? We have this band. We're gonna be huge or whatever. And then it was like, okay, I've got to start over. And then Rise or Rust, they kind of had a lot going on from a local band. They, like Dan said, they knew this producer, Steve Hodge, who worked with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. And somehow they met him through this other friend's dad, Jim Tierney. And anyways, I was just like jealous of what they had going on. And I was too young to be in their band. And actually they Ben left the band at some point because he was doing college or whatever. And I kind of played with them a little bit, but I was like, this isn't my band. It's their band. I don't want to be in there. I want to be in my own band. I want to sing. So Dan and I in tech class, we kind of started scheming. And then I think we played we played a variety show in high school pretty early on after we first met. We just did a cover song or whatever, and then this was early days of MySpace. And then I remember Dan and I we wrote a song in your basement in that back room back there.
Yeah.
My Wishes for You, is that what it was called?
No, that one was like.
Well, I know the first one, but
that
I'm
was
talking
like
about
the
the one we
second
recorded.
one.
The one we
No,
recorded
we recorded the first one. Oh no, you're right. We recorded My Wishes for You.
We recorded one in my bedroom at my house on like the first version of Pro Tools like ever.
We just
and then
hung a microphone from the fan in his bedroom, and we had
didn't have a
two
mic
acoustic
stand.
guitars.
Yep.
And he just sang really. That was the other thing that I loved about it, was that he sang really loud. Like you could just play acoustic, and he just had this projection that was super loud. It was like, oh, we don't need a microphone. Like we can go whatever. And we both used to hang out in those studio sessions. And I remember Jake would walk around the studio with a guitar, and just they'd be like trying to, they're doing their songs, whatever, and he'd just be sitting there like singing. I think we both just really wanted to do something, and so we were like, be around people doing that, because you're young and you're like, how does the studio work? How does making a record work? Like, I think Jake had made some records with his band, but I hadn't really been in the studio in that way. But yeah, our first song, we hung a single mic, we recorded it, and then we started burning discs and selling them for $1.
But there was like a player on MySpace, and we uploaded it one night. And this is like early days of MySpace, and streaming was not a thing really, but there was a player on there, and it would say your play count. And I remember we put it up, and it was like we put our own song up, and then there was the player, and I remember like sitting at his house in his basement, and we were watching like the first day, and it was like 50, 100, 150, 200, and I think it was like 400 people listen to it or whatever, because word got onto high school probably or something like that. But we were like, damn dude, 400 people listen to us tonight, like that's amazing. And
yeah, we made it
we're like, dude, and then it was just like off to the races, I guess. And that it just was like we just kept write more songs, get more recordings. And really when we met, it was very like serendipitous that Matt Brady and Rise of Rush, this other band, was recording with Steve Hodge, because I was relentlessly like pushing myself and being like, yo, Steve, you should really check my band out. And we didn't have any songs or anything, or like we sucked. And I like handed him a CD. I'm like, you should listen to this. Like the most annoying, like if that happened to me today as a producer, because I produce records now too, if some kid was just, I'd be like, what? But it was like,
just like walking around the studio with a guitar, being like, listen to this song I wrote. And they're like, we're recording.
They're like,
record.
what is
like,
he talking about?
But I'm writing it.
It was hilarious. I just remember handing him all these CDs. I remember there was another band from town. So the serendipitous part was that, Matt had this whole band, Charlie and Matt and Ben and Jordan, had happened to go to our high school, and they kind of had this like random connection with a legit music business person. And there's a chance that doesn't happen. None of this happens, because it just was enough of a piece of the real business, because there's not much of the real music industry hanging around Minneapolis. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, when Prince, yes, but that's its own thing, right? Like, we're not going to get with Prince, but so yeah, go ahead, Dan.
There was the Replacements, and there was Prince, and there was Atmosphere, and there were these different like little sects or little groups of people that were in the business. But also we're 20 minutes from Minneapolis. We're on like Lake Minnetonka, just outside of the city, where you drive 5-10 minutes one way and you're at this Lake Minnetonka, and you drive 10 minutes the other way and you're in, you were like where Bob Dylan lives in farmland.
Nowhere, yeah.
And that's where our high school was. It was literally like next to the football field is like a big barn that people would paint, and there were fields and cornfields and stuff like that. And it was just like, there's not a whole lot of the music business out in the fields of rural Minnesota.
But that connection, I think, is what they get to Steve, and then we had this ambitious like attitude of just like, dude, we want to be huge, and we just like we need to get with whatever. And then somehow they knew this other band called Dropping Daylight. I don't even remember how that went. They must have played a show together. Ben Berger and Seth met somehow. Anyways, Dropping Daylight had a record deal on A&M Records, Octone, right?
It was Octone.
Yeah.
Or Octoscope. It was like
Yeah, Interscope, A&M, Optone. But anyways, and then there's this. It just felt like, okay, we just had enough of a, like, you start putting the little pieces together, and we weren't that far away from the real business. You know what I mean? And so Dan and I just, like, we would start playing with Rise of Rust, and then finally we convinced Steve Hodge to record 5 songs with us, and that really kind of I mean, it didn't take us that long. We were really pretty serious right off the get-go, and it took us maybe like a year, and then all of a sudden we were like making the record with Steve. And then once we put that out, we were booking our own shows, and we were working MySpace, and any other band that was around town that was kind of bubbling up, we were like hitting them up, like, let's do a show together, Rise of Rust. And then we meet Dropping Daylight, and Seth from Dropping Daylight always tells me, so funny, like, I remember this too. I was backstage with them. They were opening for Breaking Benjamin at the Myth, and I went on their RV too, and I just gave Seth always laughs about it. Like, I gave him like 10 CDs. I was like, just here you go, man. Like, just give them to whoever, because, like, I got to get in the music industry. So here you go, man. He's always like, what was I supposed to do with 10 CDs? Like,
well, it's funny. I was thinking about it too. Like, there's this artist now who just had a record come out yesterday called Mod Sun.
Yeah.
And he's engaged to Avril Lavigne, and he's out here in LA. And he was in like a screamo band, called 4 Letter Lie. And I liked them. I was really into screamo, and he played drums for the band. And I remember I was like hanging out with this chick, and they had done a show, and like girls really liked that band. They were kind of this cute screamo band, whatever. And he had an after party at his mom's house. The drummer did. Mod's son had a party at his mom's house, and this girl was like, "We're going over." Cool. And I brought a fucking stack of CDs. Yeah. And I left them around his mom's house.
Yeah. Just
like I left one in the bathroom. I like hid one in the cabinet of the kitchen. I like put them everywhere. And like, I haven't run into him recently. We ended up doing a bunch of shows with them back in the day. And the last time I saw him was probably 10 years ago in Minneapolis, before he was out here, and we were out on the road with Avenged. And
well, the funny thing about that was that Kevin Scaff, the guitar player of 4 Letter Lie, is the guitar player in A Day to Remember. And they're huge, obviously, now. But Kevin and I live like a quarter mile from each other on the same road in Nashville, and we hang out. And like, I can remember playing the What's Up Lounge in Mankato, Minnesota, for like 100 people with 4 Letter Lie, and Kevin sitting outside the van, and Mod's son. And then I remember playing with them, and then we were just all like so broke, but we're just doing the thing, you know. And I remember Kevin was like, "I think I'm gonna go play in this other band or whatever," and I'm like, you know, whatever. And there's like A Day to Remember. Now they're massive, but it's crazy to think that there was all these connections somehow, that the people that really wanted to make it have somehow hung on, and we really wanted it. And it wasn't because we were more talented than other bands. There's a ton of bands that are probably more talented, but I don't know if anybody wanted it as bad as we did. So that was, our ambition was definitely clear from the get-go, but that's a long-winded answer, but sorry.
Yeah. And it is like synchronicity, serendipitous, like he said, that like, we just happen to be rubbing shoulders and all sort of going at this thing around people who are still doing it today. Like Kevin, A Day to Remember, and Mod's son, who's out here doing records, and we're doing records. And it's like, if you really want to do something, and you just like relentlessly, that's all you're thinking about, and you're trying to do it, like, you end up rubbing shoulders and being like, finding your people who are like that. And here we are 15 whatever years later, and the ones who were that
serious back then
are still doing it, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. And you guys, I mean, it wasn't just like, oh, you know, you're thinking about it all the time and want to do this. You put in the work, you put in the action, you know, to make it happen. I mean, just going out, you know, in the middle of the studio and tell, hey, here, check out this, you know.
Well, and we put our money where our mouth is, you know.
Yeah. And like, you know, your friends go off to college. You think that at first it's done, you know, college isn't for you. It's like, obviously, you know, the rich kid song's definitely a shoot, you know.
Yeah.
You're going to go off to college, and the music was your thing, you know. And you and Dan you're waking Dan up in class, and you're putting these ideas in his head, and you guys finally get together and play. When did the name New Medicine, when did that become who you guys were then?
Well, actually, we were first called A Verse Unsung. That was our first band name. That's the first incarnation of the band. We didn't have a band name before that. No, that was the first, right? Yeah.
That was the first band name, yeah.
because I was trying to remember, like I had so many band names of me and Carl's bands and stuff, but
Right.
there was another, anyways, it's like Counterculture, and then a verse unsung, and we went as AVU. That's really all of the beginning years. That's what we were talking about, that when Dan and I played music together, we had all these other songs and stuff and other members and whatever. But then when it was like 2009 when we got signed to a record deal, we got sued by our drummer from high school, and it was like a whole thing. And we're like, he's like, AVU, I was part of that band way back when. And we were like, you didn't write anything. You didn't have, it was just a mess. And we were just like, dude, we have all new songs. We have all new members. What are you talking about? Let's just start
It was like literally the day
we got
I think that we got a record deal, that they had announced we had a record deal, that we get sued. You know, this kid came from a family, hadn't been in the band in a few years, and we got brought into this lawsuit. And I think through that process, we just, not only was there were new members, the music was changing. It was just like we weren't really that band anymore. And so we started talking about, you know, name changes, and just like, let's, you know, as the music was changing, as this was a new band, as all this stuff was going on, it was like, it's time to sort of redefine
what we are,
and what we are, and just come up with a name that like fits that, and kind of separates us from the old high school band that we had started.
Yeah. When we started the band, it was like we wanted to be like Thrice, or like some like, or like I don't even know, like just like screamo. We were into screamo, like in my chem, and like I don't know, just
Seosin,
yeah.
Like we liked Avenged Sevenfold, you know.
But when we really started getting serious about songwriting, and I was like I started coming to Nashville and writing songs down here, and I was just more so trying to write stuff that was like, I just wanted to play an arena and have everyone sing along to my songs, and I started kind of not caring about screaming and you know, having an emo swoop anymore, and was like, hey, I just kind of want to write like great songs that a lot of people would connect with, and just that's kind of so that's kind of the shift. Like 2009 was, I think that's when we did that, and that's when
and right before, I love this story. Like right before that, you know, when I was a senior, we knew we didn't want to go to school, but we were like, I think my mom was still a little bit like, maybe you should go to school, you know. And so just to sort of placate her, make her happy, we're like, well, we'll go look at recording schools in LA, which was really just, I had never been to LA. I don't think Jake had ever been to Hollywood. It was like, it was sort of an excuse to get my mom to like buy us a ticket to Hollywood, right? We're like, just, we're going to go look at recording schools, even though we had no intention. And we came to Hollywood. We toured all the schools, the LA Recording School, this or that. And we went to dinner at the Hard Rock in Universal City. And there used to be this huge, the Gibson Amphitheater there at Universal City Walk. And we're eating dinner, and we see that Avenged Sevenfold is playing next door. And so we leave dinner, and we're like, we want to go see this show. And my mom's like, okay. So we walk over, and I remember there like a group of skater kids like standing there, and I'm like, it said sold out. I was like, hey man, like it says it's sold out, but you think we can get a ticket? And these guys were kind of like, it's been sold out for months. Good luck, fucking idiot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, thanks, dick. And, you know, and I walk up to the booth, and I'm like, hey, I know you're sold out. Like, do you by any chance have tickets? And she's like, what time is it? You know, oh, it's 9:45. I can release these tickets. She sold us 2 second-row seats. It was like $20 each.
It was
so
cheap.
So I get these tickets, and I walk back up to this group of skaters, and I'm like, second row, bitches. Yeah. You know? And so we go in, and it was crazy too, because we're sitting there, and we turn around, and like Mark McGrath and all of Sugar Ray is like sitting in the seats behind us. And we see CKY opens up, and then Avenged comes out. And this is 2006.
6, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, this is like right when they blew up.
06, yep.
Yeah, because it might have been it was 06. I think it was early in 06.
Because I graduated 07. Yeah, it was 06. Yep.
Yeah. And we saw Avenged play, and it was just like, I just remember like there were just moments where we looked at each other, and we were like, this is it, dude. Like, we were visiting schools all day, and it was like the most boring thing ever. And then we were at this arena show with this, it was like seeing Motley Crue in the 80s or something. You know, we just were there at a moment where it was like, this it was all happening for this band, and it was such a great show. And we're like, we're not going to recording school. We're going to go make records, and we're going to tour with this band. First, like 3-4 years later, we ended up getting signed, what we're talking about. And we have ended up, I mean, we've done 50, 60 shows with these guys. I mean, we ended up doing a ton of tours with them and getting to watch them grow as a band and watch their show every night on tours. Like, such a cool
You get
thing
to share
do.
that story with them when you're on the road with them and everything.
I
Yeah.
think we did when they came in the dressing room one of the first nights. They were
Well,
saying
I
that.
told Sinister Gates about it because I got my chest tattooed on the first tour we did with them. There was a guy in an RV tattooing people, and I got this big chest tattoo, and he ended up going and getting a chest tattoo from that same guy the next day that said Forever, and he would wear a V-neck and it would say Rev right here in the middle. And I ended up sitting with him, and we were talking about our tattoos, and this guy, that Vic, who tattooed us, and I just said, dude, when I was a senior in high school, I saw you play the show at the Gibson Amphitheater, and it was like my mission in life to get to tour with you guys, and here we are. And he was just like, dude, that's awesome, super cool. And they took one of the CDs, and I remember him saying, dude, I've listened to the record, like it's really good.
Yeah, I remember they came into the dressing room one day and they said, like, how do you play that Little Sister song? Because I tuned my guitar to open C, and it's really like you really couldn't figure the chords out unless you were tuned to this really messed up tuning, because it just wouldn't make sense. It's like, how do you play that? And I was thinking, you're asking me how to play my. It was a full circle moment for sure. And those guys were rad, man. We did a tour, one of the big tours we did with them. Something happened with the rigging unit and something. We were playing a big arena up in Worcester, Massachusetts. And it was the second show of the tour in Worcester, Mass. Anyways, we're waiting around all day to play or to get set up. And it was just like, they had some union BS where they couldn't get the cherry pickers up to get their lighting and stuff up in the rig and push the show back. And anyways, they ended up being like, dude, because of the time, there's 4 bands and there's no time left. We have to cut you guys tonight. And we were like, oh shit. And instead of just going and leaving and going to the next show, they're like, we'll still pay you guys. Like the promoter was, it was the promoter's fault, and the band came in and apologized. But before they had come in, we had already went out. Instead of when we were supposed to be playing, they wouldn't let us play because they're still setting up the stage. It was all these problems. We just went out in the stands and just started selling CDs and saying, hey, we're the band that we're supposed to play. They wouldn't let us play. Like, buy a CD. And we sold like 300 CDs. And I remember the Avenged guys came in. They're like, yo, dude, so sorry about tonight. And we're like, it's cool, man. We just sold like 300 discs. And they were like, what? And they're like, that's so punk rock, dude. Hell yeah, dude. And they were like, I think they had mad respect for us because we were just hustlers, dude. We were like, we're here, dude. We already drove here.
I think we were like stoked too because of the situation. Like, they ended up shouting out to us during the set and being like, like,
oh yeah,
check out this band, and like, we're sorry that this happened, but New Medicine, those guys are right. And like, I just remember standing in the arena, like selling CDs and like seeing M Shadows up there, like saying our band name. And it was just like, holy shit, this is awesome. Super
That's awesome. So then, you guys, obviously this happens after you get on the label and they're putting out your music. And then, I mean, like I was saying before we went on the air, like I was going down the rabbit hole watching a lot of your music videos, and they're all just like fun. There's all, I loved all the different themes, but like this was, the first CD was what, Race You to the Bottom, right?
Yep. Race You to the Bottom. Yep.
This is the one that got you on the road with Avenged and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was kind of like we signed in like, I think it was probably July 2009, and then it took a long time to make the record, and then it was like a full year later, I think we put it out, like 2010. But that's when we were on the label, and we put out we had the Takeover out and a few things, like a single and stuff. But then we put the album out in 2010, and we got this Rockstar Energy Drink Uproar tour. And our agent, Ryan Harlacker, who we still work with today, he was like, man, I think I can get you guys this tour, because he booked Avenged Sevenfold. And so the label and everybody just put everything together to get us on this tour, and we got this tour. And that was like right when our album was coming out, and we had a lot of buzz and stuff. And so we do this Rockstar Energy Drink tour, and it was a little bit I'm not saying it was an amazing experience, but it was something for us to say we're going on tour with the Avenged Sevenfold, but really we were playing in the parking lot at like 5 p.m. and they were playing at like, you know what I mean? Like it was like 8-band festival during the day. It was kind of like a mini Warped Tour-esque kind of thing. And we had to switch off with this other band from Canada of who would play first every night. We would play first one night and then they would play first. And then we'd switch back and forth. They said like every other day, I think it was. And, so we got that tour, but we hustled, man. We were out in the parking lot and we were just trying to make fans greet at one at a time. And then our radio single came out. Our first single was a song called Laid. And it did okay. It got to like 33 and then it fell off. But luckily, I don't know how it happened. Like early 2011, we got asked to go. Avenged said, "Hey, do you guys want to come on this a Nightmare After Christmas tour?" And so we're like, that was a really big breaking point, I feel like, for us. And so we got to go on this arena tour. And from that's about the time that we thought we were going to get dropped, I think, at some point, because our first single didn't do very well. And there was just like crickets from the label, like, we don't know what we're going to do next. And somebody started playing our song, Race You to the Bottom.
Well, it was Serious Octane because, the song says fuck like 16 times in it. Yeah. So I remember just being when we were doing it, I remember being in the studio recording the song and there was people being like, yeah, the label isn't sure they want to put this song on the record. It says fuck a lot and whatever. And it was like, okay, well, that's interesting because that's actually the title of the record. So it should probably be on the record. And there was just no interest from the suits about that song. But Serious Octane, on satellite radio, they didn't have to, you could swear on there. So they started playing it there. And then it became it was like in the top 20 songs. And it just, the fans loved it. And it just took on a life of its own. Like we ended up shooting a video for a different single. We started doing radio promo for Baby's Gone. And we were going to do this ballad. And then Octane started playing that song and it just got big and started getting downloads and getting attention. And I just remember there was like, all right, we're not putting out this video we just shot. We're going to go shoot a new video for this song and make this the single. And that's really when like radio started playing us and we were getting more shows and like there was some like success in their eyes sort of thing, because it's all numbers and whatever.
Yeah, it was like sorry, go ahead, Billy.
I was going to say, I mean, I really enjoyed that video too, because of the Grindhouse, theme to it and everything. And, and I don't know if that was around the same time where like Quentin Tarantino put out the Grindhouse movies.
It was probably not long after it for sure.
Yeah, a little bit after.
But it was like, it looked like something that the Avenged guys would be into as well.
For sure.
That would catch their eye. But, that wasn't supposed to be the hit. And it kind of Octane helped it become the hit. Yeah, and then they had obviously the money to back it up with that video because it was very well done.
Terrestrial radio picked it up after that. And so we ended up having a top 15 record at Terrestrial on the Billboard. And I think it would have charted higher, but the length of like there was no game plan. So like a lot of how like a number one song works is like you're the most played on the format at this week. I mean, that's what like a number one song would be, right? So we had so much early play from some stations. It was all random, like, okay, well, these stations were on early, but we didn't have a game plan. And by the time like the last stations were like, oh, this is a hit, these first stations were like, okay, we've been playing that song for like 4 months now. We're going to kind of back off of it. So our numbers never said like, you're the number one most played. But if you look at our downloads, it was like a number one song. It was like
the timing never worked where all the stations were playing it in full swing at the same time because it was out of nowhere. Like you said, it just took on a life of its own.
It was a hit, it was a hit. So it was like, we didn't get the trophy, but we could tell all of a sudden bands were asking us to go on the road. We were getting paid a little bit more for shows. And it was just like, and we were seeing people sing our songs at the shows. We were like, oh shit, people know this song now. So That was the big.
Somebody at Octane was just like, I like this song, I'm gonna play it.
I think it was Jose who still works there, Jose Mangan,
Yeah.
and he's awesome, and he was always a big supporter of us. And to be honest, man, like I don't think any of us back then. I mean, we were pretty young for having a record. I mean, like I was like 20.
23. Yeah.
No, I was 20 when I signed. Yeah.
So
because I remember I couldn't drink. I was July, and I went like a month later. I was 21 or something.
Yeah. So when that song really, because it was such a delayed thing, right? It took a year to make the record after signing. Then it was, a year into the record when we really had a big break. So yeah, it was like 22, 23, playing arenas and being on radio everywhere. And then that's around the time, we were on tour for like a year. And then I just remember coming home, and this is, for me, this is when my friends were coming back from college, all those kids that were like, I'm worried about you, dude. Yeah, you're going to go be a rock star. Like you should go to school, this, that. And we came home for a break during the summer, and like, and we're having this success, and we're on the radio, and my friends are back, working, mowing lawns for their dad's company, or, having no job but a degree. And they're like, dude, you're everywhere. Like it happened. And I'm sitting there like, I guess so. You're like, oh, cool. Like, yeah, I guess it's happening. Cause you kind of get in the tour world, and you're touring, and like you walk into certain rooms and everybody knows who you are, but you're not like, we're not yet going out to restaurants or going places and having people like that came, a little bit after that, where you'd go out and people would like pick up your check, or, they'd show up with a bunch of drinks. People are sending drinks over and stuff. And then they'd, race you to the bottom. And it was like, but it was a weird thing. It was right when all my friends were graduating college, and our career took off. And it was like, okay, like I made the right choice. Cause if they're scared for me, you can imagine how freaking scary it is to be the only people who didn't go to college, and to believe in yourself at that age, at that level, like we're going to do this. And it's not like, at the climate of that time of, 2008, 2009, that the record business, there wasn't a lot of like good press, like, oh, this is a booming business. It was like records were disappearing from the shelves. Like this thing, it felt like it was dying, and no one knew what the future was. So it was even scarier. You're like, what is the future of the music business? Is there one? Because it's all free. And then it switched over to iTunes downloads, and then we came out at such a transitional place where we grew up going to the store and buying CDs, and then all of a sudden it's like there's one rack of CDs at Best Buy or Target. You're like, weird.
Yeah, and it really kind of plays into all this. I mean, it's a long-winded thing, but just in summary, it really plays into the whole where we're at today, and how we kind of came out at a weird time, because you want to get a record deal back then because you can't record yourself because it's cost a lot of money to go in the studio, and you want your CD to be in Best Buy, and there's no way to do that, to get your CD in every store in America unless you get a record label. And so we do that. Sorry,
just for people to think you're legitimate back then. It was like, if you don't have a deal, if you're not with one of these companies, these corporations, like you're a local band.
Yeah, for sure. But that we came out at that time, and so we signed all this stuff away to get a record deal and do that. And then it's like, yeah, that's now going away. And now and we were just, there was just so much. It was like the beginning. MySpace was now over, and now Facebook was the thing. And it was just everything was changing. And no
Instagram, no TikTok yet.
The other thing about that time period, I would say too, for us in the band, which is a very strange feeling, which I think not many people want to talk about it because it's not sexy, because it's like you want to just have this facade that we're rock stars. Of course, when we came home, we're like, yeah, we're rock stars, but we lived at our parents' house. The reality is you're playing an arena, but we were getting paid $250 a night for the entire band. That does not include hotels. That does not include gas. So how are you going to make $250, get you 2 hotel rooms, pay for the gas in the van, insurance? We're paying a crew. They're our buddies, but we made it work. And so it's a really strange feeling when you have a song on the radio and then you don't have any money, and you're like, oh my God, yeah, we have it, but we're sleeping in a van in a Walmart parking lot tonight. Like how is this a thing? But
shout out Shout out to the Walmart Inn. I mean,
Yeah.
we stayed there for years. We built bunks in the trailer, and we're not talking like LA every show. We're talking like December in Omaha, Nebraska, sleeping in
trailer,
sleeping bags that are for like negative 20-degree weather in the fucking trailer.
But that's something I try to talk about because I don't have any like. To me, I'm just like, that's reality, and anyone that thinks differently, it was just like, no, you don't understand. Like, it's not what you think it is. You know what I mean? But luckily, you know, through the course of all this stuff, like we've been able to like retain the rights back to our music, and like, yeah, the band makes money now, but like it didn't back then when we had all this. The funny thing is, we have nothing now. We're making way more money than we ever have. But when we had a record deal, a manager, an agent, and we were on arena tours, we were making no money, and now we'd make way more money by not having anybody involved because we just do it ourselves, which, like I said, it's just it's funny that we came out when we did. And then the whole transition. And I remember late when we were on Atlantic Records at the end of our tenure there, they were like, here's this app. It's called Spotify. You guys should put it on your phone. We'll give you guys this unlimited subscription. Because it's like the beta version of Spotify. You just be able to listen to anything you want on this premium app. And I remember getting it. And then all of us were like, oh shit, this is awesome. I can listen to anything. And then I remember Dan, when they cut us off and they're like, okay, no more, like we're taking it away. And we were like, wait, we'll pay for, well, how do we get that back? That was awesome. I remember like, and
it's
I just
like a
remember
drug dealer, right?
Yeah.
First one's free.
And yeah, exactly. But that was kind of that was right when that started. And then we got dropped from Atlantic. We got another record deal on another label called Imagine Records. And that was kind of like the beginning of Spotify, and it was not what it is now. But that's kind of the next step in our journey.
Now, when you guys were sleeping in the vans, in the bunks in the vans and stuff like that, were these on like the tours, like with Avenged? And I see you guys
absolutely
with, like,
Yeah,
Disturbed and Papa Roach, I think.
Well, look, the first big tour we did with Avenged, where we were playing on the outside stage with like Hell Yeah and Airborne, we had a bus and we split it with that other band from Canada. And then when you finish a tour like that, you're like, I'm on a bus, I'm doing radio interviews, I'm playing for crowds, I'm signing autographs, I'm doing meet and greets, we're getting press, we're on the radio. And then you know, the business manager or whatever comes and goes, okay, you made $100,000, but you spent 120 to live this way. And you're like, wait, so we just lost?
And yeah, we had asked the label for money to pay for our losses, you know?
Right. And then
and you pay that.
Them,
yeah.
It's like a payday loan scam or something.
Oh, and then and guess what? Your payment plan with a record label is they get a 85% interest on every dollar you spend. So when you're a kid and you're young like that, you just think, of course, our music's going to be huge and we're going to be millionaires. So who cares about this 10 grand we're going to get for this bus right now? And then you don't realize how hard it is to pay that back. And it's just a mess. But
so we never spent the money on a bus again. We did vans or we did an RV, because it just was like, we don't need to live like that to make no money. Like, we want to move out of my mom's house. You know, this is,
we
I want to make a living.
Yeah. It was like you could be comfortable on the road and come home with no money or rough it a little bit. We'd come home with a little cash in our pocket at the end of it. And we're like, we don't need the vanity of having a bus. We don't care, you know.
Plus, you're in your early 20s and you want to like see the world. Like, I wanted to be in a touring band to go out and experience and see the world. And when you're on a bus, you see the inside of an arena, you play a show, you get back on the bus, they drive overnight, you wake up, they're
in a parking lot.
You're in a parking lot or in an arena. There's no food, there's nothing around, and there was no Uber. So it was like you'd have to call a taxi and pay $60 or something to go see anything. So we just never saw anything. But you get in the van, it's like we'd see the world. You'd be driving and you'd see the world, and we could go to a campground, we could go to a river, we could go, like
we
Missoula,
did everything.
Montana.
We've seen this. Yeah, we've seen the entire United States a million times, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. Honestly, it
was way more fun. Because if you stop a bus, unless you need gas, they charge you, right? Like, if someone needs to take a dump, it's like there's a charge for that. So
yeah, the buses are expensive, man, and even today, we have a lot of play a lot of big shows still today, and it's just like it's just got to make sense, and like we're just reasonable people. We're not like it's just we're not gonna go waste all of our money on something if we don't need to. And I like I said, there's all these like facades and veils about the music industry, and there's divas and shit like that, but we're not that band. We're just like a working class, like, hey, we're here to play music, you know what I mean? And we don't really give a shit how we got here. We're trying to be reasonable,
Yeah. Now, Dan had mentioned something to me in our some of our previous conversations. You guys got a chance to play some military bases as well?
Yeah, that was early on, 2008, kind of almost before we got a record deal, actually, right before. And we actually had played in South by Southwest in Austin, and some guy like handed his card through the window to you. Who's it, you or Aaron?
Yeah. So we were doing a showcase. All these labels were there. Virgin, all these major labels were checking us out, and we're like, cool. We're trying to get a deal, and we're playing, and we just had this whole room just going. I mean, like there was just an energy in there, and I remember like you're packed in this. You're in a corner. You're in this room. It's full of people, and there's open windows, and this guy walks up, and he's like, "Yo, you're awesome. I work with Air Force Entertainment, call me." And he hands me a card, and I was like, sweet. And I remember leaving there, and I remember going on these tours over the next few months, and it was like this number was like 25 digits. It was like some number, I don't even know, but I remember on my like flip phone, like every day, like calling this number and calling, and it would just ring and ring, and no one would answer for like months, for like 2 months, no one would answer. And finally one day somebody answers, and I'm like, hey, somebody gave me their card and said we should go overseas and play on military bases in the Middle East. And we want to do that. And he's like, okay, well, hey, email this guy or, email this. And I wrote it down, and then I just kind of handed it off to Jake, and he took it from there. He got in touch with whatever general or whatever person was in charge of booking that. And then Jake got that all set up. We had to get passports and shots, and
it was wild. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we spent 3 weeks in the Middle East. We went to Kuwait, we went to Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, Abu Dhabi, and it was one of the greatest experiences, I think, of my life. Being young, early 20s, and during that time, when we were fighting these two wars in the Middle East. And just I had friends who enlisted, who went over and fought. One of our best friends, like when we started the band, was an EOD, and so just to go over there and like I ran into kids from my high school class. I'm on stage at Camp Arif John in Kuwait, or no, it was the Rock.
Kuwait.
It was a Kuwait.
Arif John was in Kuwait.
Because we stayed at Arif John, but then we played at the Rock, which was also, I think, in Kuwait. But we had security.
Yeah, that was up by Ali Salim. That was like the Air Force.
Ali Salim, yep, I remember playing.
Oh wait, Ali Salim, and then that's where they let us put on the big red coats and run around and have the canines tackle us and stuff. That was cool. But I remember kids from my graduating class. There was a kid who was, he worked refueling jets, and we were on stage playing, and he just walked up and he's like, "What are you doing here in Kuwait?" And I was like, holy shit, and just what an experience. I remember the first time we played a show, we start playing, and I'm looking out, and it just looks like a weird cloud, something. We're like, what is going on? And about, halfway through the second song, I'm 7 feet away from Jake, and I can't see him because it was a dust storm.
Yeah.
And we put up our handkerchiefs, and we're just covered in dust, and we can't even see the crowd. And we're playing at this, amphitheater on the base there. And it was just like, you're just experiencing life in a way that is like, it changes your perception of life, because you're like, oh, everything that I know is only one way that people experience life. Like there's a whole world out here. And just spending those days like sitting on base, sitting with different people in the military and the army, and hearing about them living over there, missing their families, and just those stories and those times sitting around talking to people was like, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah. One of my favorite definitely experiences that we had as a band, and I'd love to go do some more military shows. There's some talk about doing some of those again, and Yeah, it was just really cool and a very appreciative audience, and put a lot of perspective into where there's people all around the world, away from their families. I mean, we were there for a month, and we could feel how hard that would be. And so just to think, wow, these guys are staying over here. We get to go home, but they don't. And we were just glad to bring a piece of home to them,
Yeah, well, like I think me and Dan kind of figured this out. So this will be Jake hearing this for the first time. But you said that was 2008.
Yep.
You guys are over there, and 2000. I know the bass names because I was there in 2008, and
yep,
may have been in that crowd watching you guys, especially with the dust storms, because my lungs are still paying for it today. But
for sure,
a lot of the pictures on my banner behind me are from that time that I was over there in 2008, and I actually got.
And he saw Scott Stapp.
Yeah,
so it definitely would have been that time.
Yeah, because I was Scott Stapp's security for his show, and I actually got him. My oldest daughter just turned 8 while I was over there, and he sang "Happy Birthday" to her on video for me and everything. Because I told him how like "Arms Wide Open" was like that came out when she was born, and I was like, that was just such a tear-jerking song, being a dad and all that stuff. So we had like our bonding moment,
That's awesome.
But yeah, and then years later, I become friends with Dan, and we start sharing these stories. I'm like, wait, you guys were there in 2008? No shit. So
yeah, that's random and cool. That's awesome.
Some more of the synchronicities coming back,
Yep.
Here.
Yep. That's awesome.
But
thank you for your service, by the way. That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, man. And then, so we touched a little bit about like, how the music industry kind of like, you felt kind of defeated, and around like 2015, I guess, was the time when you guys decided to take a hiatus, that it was like, you're kind of over getting paid $250 and living in a van, I guess. Or
that's exactly it. It was actually, I remember the moment was like, for me personally, was like when I just knew I had to be, I was like, this is not the right path anymore. We were supposed to go open up on a tour for $100 a show. It wasn't $250. We were always like, that was always like the bare minimum. That would be like, bands would always, out of respect, get $250. Like even if you were brand new, it's like, I'll give them $250. Like they can come on this tour. And it was like, oh yeah, they want you to go play first of 4, meaning the first band of 4 bands. We've already had a hit on the radio. This is our second album, and our label, the first single that came out, One Too Many, which by the way now has like 8 million streams, 9 million streams. 10, I don't even know where it's at now. But they weren't able to get it up the chart, and it was just another failed single. But we've had it, we're on a second record deal. We have another song, and then they want us to go on tour for $100 a show. And like Dan and I were talking about, there's a thing called tour support, and you would ask and say like, hey, if we're going to do this and we're going to lose money, can you guys cover our costs? Because we're going out to promote our music that you guys own. And they were like, no, not on this tour. And I was like, you want me to go out for $100 a night, 6 people in a van? That's all the money we're going to get for the night. And we're going to play first basically at like 6 o'clock. And who the hell goes and sees a band at 6 o'clock? You know what I mean? Like, You go see a band, the first local band that goes on and plays at, first to 4. Right. And it was just like a slap in the face to me. And I was just like, I felt so disrespected and underappreciated by the business. And I was just like, I'm done with this crap. Like, this is not the path that we were always going up. Like, it was always like, okay, well, there's something on the horizon. We got this new record deal. We have this new record. This record that I thought there are multiple songs on this record that are like hit songs, hit rock songs. And it was just like nothing happened. Nothing happened. We were just still,
There's no plan. There's no like, and I get it. Like at the time it was confusing. Streaming was happening, but it wasn't.
No, there was like
it wasn't a way that people's careers were leveling up. And, we were on an indie label, which means, okay, cool, better splits. It's, maybe it's 65% that they're taking instead of 85.
It was still
whatever.
85.
We had a little more, oh God.
Yeah.
And we have a little more creative control in the fact that like we got to go into a studio and make the record we wanted to make with the producer that we chose, which was cool down in Nashville. But there wasn't, but at the end you're like, okay, we've made this great thing. And now if you're not going to push it or make a plan or put any money behind it, it still was really hard to break through in an independent way, you know? And
Well, yeah, and your hands are tied because all the money goes to the label, or you know what I mean? Like there's no like if any dollar is spent, you have to be approved by them. And if they don't think it's a good idea, then they say no. You know what I mean? And then if you do something on your own free will and go like, okay, we're gonna save up and we're gonna spend our own money and make a video or do whatever. First of all, back then it was, you know, this is almost 10 years ago now. It wasn't as easy to make stuff by yourself and cheap, but it would be like, even if we did, they'd still own it and take all the money from it because they own the rights to it. So it's like, what we're like, we can't DIY it because we're on a label, but they don't want to spend any money. And I'm not like, you know, it's all good. It all worked out how it's supposed to. But like that was at that time, I was just like fed up with it. And I remember just having a call with the label and there was like a dead silence on the phone. And I think my manager expected me to be like kissing their ass or something like that. And I was like, I'm a grown man now. I mean, I don't live at my parents' house. I got to pay rent this month. And you want me to go on the road, you know. And when we signed this record deal, with the promise was always like, oh yeah, like money's not an issue. Like we have tons of money. We want to blow you guys up. And so we're like, okay, well now you want us to go do this crappy tour. Like this is the best opportunity we have. And was just, I was just like, I'm not, this isn't going to work for me. And then they were just like silent, like, so what do you mean? And I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm done with this crap. You know what I mean? I'm done being treated like a slave to everybody else. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the moment for me that I just was like, I'm done.
And I just tell people, I mean, I'm personally, I'm a big fan of like 30 Seconds to Mars and Jared Leto as an actor and as a musician. I like his stuff. Some people don't. I actually got to meet him like a week ago on the Paramount lot. He just walked by me and I talked to him, but he made a documentary called Artifact, because even, you know, 30 Seconds to Mars on their second record went and sold 4 million copies and went to their label and said, why haven't we seen a penny? And the label said, because you owe us $1 million. And he's like, I just sold 4 million records, had the biggest artist of the year, won awards, played the Video Music Awards on MTV, and I owe you $1 million. And so then there was a whole lawsuit where they said, okay, well, we're not going to honor this contract. It's, you know, like we're out of this. We're going to go get a new deal. And the label ended up suing their own artist for $30 million. So he made a documentary during this whole time. And anyone who gets into the music business, like I tell them, go watch this documentary, because it is exactly the machine that we got caught up in. Only we had to learn it by experience. This documentary didn't exist then. We couldn't watch that and go, oh, this is how this. So he breaks business works, how these deals work, how it completely screws the artist. And it's just like such a great documentary called Artifact, 30 Seconds to Mars. And that's what we experienced. And I think the other thing too is like now, you know, we had 10 years of touring and being on a label and being on radio and doing all these things. And like, you're not really making a living and things aren't growing, right? Like you think 10 years of work and everyone else is having success off it financially. Everyone else is making some bread off you, but you're like, you feel like stuck, like, okay, our band's getting bigger, but nothing is changing in our lives. Plus at that point, you know, we're not 20 anymore. We're like 28, or we're pushing into 30. And it's like, there were other things in life that, you know, you start to think about. You start to think about relationships and how being on the road, it's really hard to have relationships. How would I have a family and be on the road all year? You know, you miss weddings, you miss funerals, you miss so much of your life. You're giving away for this dream, and it's not really providing you life. You feel like you're missing some stuff. And there were other creative things, I think, that both of us, you know, you do feel a sense of accomplishment because you're like, okay, we have this dream to go play arenas and put out rock records and be on the radio and do videos and all this stuff. And we've done all of that. And it's like, I had other things that I wanted to explore. Like acting is something I love. And we'd be on tour. All I would do is buy movies at the gas station and watch them. And I wanted to come to Hollywood, and I wanted to like study filmmaking, and I wanted to study acting and learn about that. And I know Jake, always being the songwriter that he is, and all these connections in Nashville and people he was working with, I think he also was like, I want to do some more of that. So you have things change. You have other goals that you want to do. So that was part of it too. It was also like, let's go accomplish some more things in our life.
Well, here's where it stems from me too, which was number one. Yeah, we had these dreams, get on the radio, get a record deal, check, did that. Get on the radio, check, did that. Have a hit, check, did that. Get a tour bus, check, did that. Go play arenas, check, did that. And then you do this whole cycle of playing clubs, being first of three, $250 a show, $500 a show maybe. Grind it out, try to sell merch, get back from tour, you don't have any money. And then it just kept, we're in this cycle, and like you're supposed to just be super grateful to be going on tour and it's all great. And it's like Dan said, we were just flatlined. And then for me, it was not that I didn't want it. Like I still thought this is one of the best albums I've ever made. I just was like done with the system. And I just thought the definition of insanity is to doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And I was just like, this is insane. You think I'm going to go on this next tour for $100 a show and that's what's going to change it? No. So I was like, not that I didn't want to be done doing music. I knew I still had all this fire in me to do music still. I was just like, not in this way though. Like clearly this path is not working because we're doing the same thing over and over. And all of a sudden now nothing's changing. Right. So that was it for me. And like Dan said, yeah, it's just, you just kind of at some point you just go like, man, we got to try something else. And so that's when that happened. But fast forward that same record, you know, I don't even know, 3-4 years after that. It seemed like longer than that, but it wasn't that long.
It did. And it's amazing because it's like you think about 3 or 4 years of not putting out any new music, not doing any shows, no promotion, nothing.
Yeah,
right?
Zero.
And we had been on the road 10, 11 months a year for years. I mean, I hadn't been home, or people move on with their life. They have jobs, they start having kids, they start getting married. And we were on the road working our asses off. And life's passing you by, and then we stop, right? Like we go do these other things for a few years, and then, you know.
Well, yeah, then the music starts kind of bubbling up on Spotify because guess what? There's no gatekeepers at Spotify. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just who wants to listen to what? Here's all the music. You know what I mean? It's not when you listen to the radio, it's here's the bands you need to listen to and then go buy their CD at the store. That's how that had worked for so long, or buy their CD on iTunes. And yeah, of course, the bands on the radio still get preferential treatment because everyone's going to know their songs more. But like people started getting this app and just kind of going like, well, I kind of want to listen to this. And then God bless AI and algorithms because people started saying, yeah, I like that. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And I remember like 2018, 19, just kind of going like, damn, dude, we got like 2 million streams of this Fire Up the Night song. That's crazy. Like 2 million. That's a lot of streams, you know? And then it was just like, we have 60,000 monthly listeners. And then it was like the next year. And meanwhile, I'm in Nashville doing a solo career, writing country songs for other artists and producing. And I'm having a blast doing that. And I've been having some success doing that as well. But I'm still kind of like keeping my eye on this thing that I worked so hard on for so long. And I'm kind of like, that's, and I'd tell people, and I was like, yeah, but it's not like crazy, right? It's like 2 million streams. That's good, but you're not the biggest thing in the world. And then it was like the next year, wow, we got 100,000 listeners, and that song's got 4 million streams, and this one's got 1 million. And then cut to, it's like 2020, I think it was about, and it was like Fire Up the Night had like 30 million streams at that point. And then like some of the other ones had 2-3 million, all this. And we had 300,000 monthly listeners. And I'm starting to go like, dude, people are listening to our music clearly now. Like you can see it. And that was about the time that I started kind of thinking like, maybe there's something, maybe there's life in this thing yet. And a huge part for me, and like, I know we just were talking about the big bad record labels and stuff, but I will give some credit where it's due and some grace where it's due. Morgan Rose from the band Seven Dust was our A&R person at Imagine Records. And like Dan, we were talking about the record, nothing happened with it. Well, now we cut to it's 2019, 2020, and I'm looking at our numbers and the exact same feeling that Jared Leto had. I'm like, all right, dude, pay up. Like we got 30 million streams. I know how this works. I know how much money that equals in dollars, and I know how much we spent. And I'm starting to do the math. Like, where's my check? And they did the exact same thing to me and came to me and said, well, listen, dude, like you only get 15 cents on the dollar for every dollar you make towards what you owe us, right? So we had spent, let's say, I don't even remember what it was, 280 grand they said they spent on us, right? Every plane ticket, every dinner, everything you've ever done that they
Every
paid
breath
for.
you take, they
Right, so
charge you.
but then you're only, every time you make 100 grand, you only recoup 15%. And so it's like, well, you got to make $1 million to recoup 300,000. And it was like, oh my God. And so I was starting to go like, dude, I'm never going to make $1 off my own record. And that's when I started calling them, and I like sent some angry emails, and my attorneys like, we want to audit you. And I was just trying to go like, dude, like we've got to have recouped, or like we're not, you're telling me I don't get a penny off my own music that's like got 40, 50 million streams now. And it was like, no, not yet. And then I had this call with Morgan, and he called the head of Imagine, and he just had a talk with him and just said, man, we're kind of, Jake is upset about this, and like, what do you want to do? Like he's pissed. We don't have to. Your business manager says, yeah, look at the contract. We don't have to pay you until here. And it was like all that. And I got a call, and it was just like, hey, I want to make this right. I'm getting, Bob, the head of the label, was like, I'm getting older now, and I want to make this right with you. So let's like, I want to give you your record back in a couple of years. Now, let me just recoup some more stuff and do this, whatever. And Morgan made that connection and then called me, and then like we had this talk, and it was like, you're going to get your music back. Just let us, figure out how we're going to do it. But Bob basically was like, I want to give you this back, because I don't even know why he did that, but it was a huge moment, and it was like a huge victory. And even though it was a few years down the road and how that all worked out, but it was like, that was a huge moment to go like, okay, wait a minute. Like I could get some of my music back, some of the rights back, and we're getting streamed now. And then I put out a song called Die Trying, which was, a great anthem for exactly what we were doing. All my life, I have to keep fighting. I'm going to prove them wrong, or I'm going to die trying. We put that song out, and that started bubbling up. And it's like, honestly, the rest is kind of history now, because now it's like that song came out. That kind of started doing really well. And then our monthly listeners went up again. And then I put another song out called Fuck It, and that went up again. And then here we are. And I just started seeing crazy reaction of like us putting new music out. And last year put out a song called Take Me Away that's been viral 1 million times. And now, on TikTok and this, that, and the other. And we started playing shows again. And it's really the fans that brought this thing back to life. And it's like, I would say 99 out of 100 of these stories end the same way, which is like, that didn't happen. You call the label and they say, go fuck yourself. You're not getting, like, literally my friend Adelaide's Way did that. He's like, I'm going to call Virgin and see if I can convince them. And I don't know what it was, by the grace of God, that Bob and Morgan were like, yeah, man, screw it. Let's make this right. I think Bob was just like, I don't want this on my conscience. Like this, I think I kind of like, because I told him, I'm like, that's my voice on there, man. That's my songs. That's my life's work there, man. Like, I want to be able to give this to my kids someday and say, this is what I did. This is like my legacy, and not owned by some like corporation that's telling me like on a spreadsheet that I'm just a number on a spreadsheet making them money. I was like, this is, so by the grace of God that happened. And that just gave me a little shot of life to go, you know what? Maybe we could do this still. You know what I mean? Like maybe there's a chance. And sorry, go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say, God, am I grateful too that things worked out that way, but also that Jake, he stayed really plugged into the songwriting and the business and kept his eye on that stuff. Cause I've been in Hollywood, I've been acting, I'm focused on acting, I'm shooting TV shows and commercials and whatever. And it was hard. I made peace with like, I'm done with the music business. Like it.
We lose you.
Uh-oh. Freezing up on us. All right.
What's that?
Oh, you froze up for a second.
Froze up on us.
You're back.
But you looked handsome while you were frozen. So.
Yeah. It was a good pose. Oh, still got a good look. Yeah, there you go.
Well, I wanted to ask you guys too, like, so 2015, you take your hiatus, and then Dan, when did you head out to LA? And then when did you head to Nashville? Like when did,
I'm not frozen, right?
You're back. Yeah.
You're good.
I'm back. All right. So yeah, like right after that. And I remember doing an interview near that time. We did a big show with 3 Days Grace, and this lady had asked us, like, what would you be doing if you weren't doing this? And I remember every single person in the band was like, well, this is what I'm thinking about. And I was like, I want to go to Hollywood and act and work on filmmaking. Jake's like, I'd love to be a songwriter and really just like, strengthen that muscle. And everyone in the band said this is the only other thing we would do. And we all went and did that, which is kind of cool to look at. And so I came out here in like 2015, started doing that. And what I was saying when I froze is that this was thank God Jake was staying plugged in and keeping an eye on all of the stuff that was happening. Cause I was 100% focused on being on set, on shooting commercials and TV shows and stuff. And the only thing that I'd hear about it was like, people would find out, people knew the song. So they'd be like, wait, is that your song? Is Fire Up the Night your song? You're in that band? And I was like, how do you know this song? And it just kept happening more and more. But, thank God Jake was really like seeing these numbers and communicating with the label and whatever, because I had made peace with, I'm moving on to this other thing. And that's a bitter pill to swallow. And, but I just kept hearing from other people, more and more people on set or in like acting school or these different places where like, dude, I love your band. I love this song. Like I remember having a roommate who Airbnb'd one of the rooms, and there was like a guy from Germany who stayed there. And I walked in the house to go to the bathroom, and this guy freezes and he's like, Dan from New Medicine. Oh my God. And like, he like knew our band and he was like a huge fan. And I was like, who are you? Why are you in my home? Like, what's happening? And he like fanboyed out. And I was like, okay, something's going on with this band that I'm completely unaware of. And, thank God that Jake was there and communicating with these people, and this life has come back to it, but it's a complete surprise to me. I was like, other than just a few people, or even like my first job in LA, like making coffee at a Starbucks in a Barnes and Noble. And I get there the first day, and the manager was like, oh my God, you're this guy from this band. And I used to be on the street team at your label. And it was like the worst day of my life. I'm like, yeah, okay, how do I make a fucking Frappuccino? Thanks. Great.
Yeah.
That I used to play arenas, you go in for a job interview and they're like, so have you ever made coffee? And you're like, I mean, I've played to 12,000 people every night consistently for years. I think I can make a fucking coffee. And they're like, yeah, but playing arenas, I mean, can you make a Frappuccino? I'm like, I don't fucking know. I can figure it out. If I figured out how to get on stage in front of 20,000 people every night, I can figure out how to make a fucking Frappuccino. Mm-hmm. It's just weird shit, Yeah,
it is, but it's a blessing. And I would say it's a combination of, there's something in the spirit and the world, and I don't know, who's out there is religious or not religious or whatever, but just something in like the karma of getting like, I felt like screwed so many times and just coming up short. This deal didn't work out. You were this close, but not quite. And that band that you were on tour with, they blew up, but you didn't. And blah, blah, blah. It was like the karma or something like came back and was just like, these guys got screwed. We missed this. And the world was like, hey, we got you. We're going to listen to the shit out of your music. And then let's talk about bringing it back to the full circle to what we were talking about. Record business changes in 2009. We're in the wrong time, wrong era, blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, serendipitously, once again, I spent 5 years from 2015 to, until now, but I still am signed as to a publishing deal as a songwriter in Nashville. But in 2015, the guy that produced and wrote almost all the songs on Breaking the Model with me, him and I really like bonded, and he took me under his wing as my mentor, as a songwriter and a producer. He produced our album, and he signed me to a publishing deal right after the band broke up. And all I've done since 2015 is write pretty much a song every single day. And I've recorded pretty much every single one of them. And the first 500, probably not as good, probably not great, but I got way, way better at writing songs and way better at producing, right? And so all this is happening was like almost serendipitous. Like I said, we take this 5-year hiatus. Well, during that hiatus, I learned how to make records. I learned how to write a lot better songs, right? And all of a sudden, all these things started happening. I the song Fuck It, I produced in my house with my best friend, Carl. We wrote it together, and who I wrote Fire Up the Night with, 10 years earlier in his apartment. Anyways, all this worked out to where like I figured out how to like record ourselves and mix my own records and do all that at the right time when our band was blowing up. And now it's like, and Dan's back there learning how to act, learning how to use cameras, learning how to, he's learning the film business. And it's like, now, bam, here we are, 2023. I'm able to make our own records. I call Dan. We go shoot a video in LA. We're able to fund ourselves because we own our own stuff. And it's just like, it's worked out so perfectly. And I would have never in a million years said this is how it was going to go. And I can't believe we hung in there and that here we are. And it's just, it really worked out. And I know it doesn't work out for everyone like it worked out for us, but it really has. And I'm just really grateful for it.
And you guys have always like, even, apart, you guys have always kept in contact, kept your relationship and,
yeah, I mean,
kind of just let each other know how things are going. And then when was the talk to kind of like, all right, dude, this, let's put out a new album. Let's get the band back together.
I think there was definitely like, when we first, because we're so driven, when we went, when we took the hiatus and we went into these other things, like we become very tunnel visioned. Like he's writing songs every single day. I'm on set every single day. I'm learning this new business. I'm doing that. And so there was like a year or two where it was a lot less communication from living on the road. And, we grew up as kids together. So it was like spending every day together, having dreams, having them come true. And then to, just texting, he'd send me songs he's working on. We'd fill each other in. He'd see me in some show, stuff like that. But it was less communication the first couple of years. And then it was like, the numbers were going up, but also like our lives were growing in different ways. Jake got married, was seeing a girl, and that became more serious. And they came out to LA and we got together on the beach. And, this is probably 2018, 2019, I think 2019. And we sat on the beach, and the first, like, as a local band, the first big song that kind of became like a hit locally, we wrote on a beach in California. And it was like that thing where we're sitting on the beach together and we're filling each other in on our lives. And I'm meeting this young woman who's going to become Jake's wife a year later. And we're just talking about what these businesses are like and what it's like. And I think that was a big moment. It was like just being in this, being together and hanging out as friends and not talking really about business, not really talking about this or that, but just, it was like, you lose a little bit of your relationship when it becomes business and you go on tour and there's so many people pulling at you and so many obligations that you forget to hang out. And you get home from a 4-month tour, you're like, I don't really want to smell your feet for a couple weeks. Like, I don't want to see you or talk to you. Like, I want to go live my life, and then we'll be on tour in a few weeks. So it was like, it was just hanging out again. It was friends, and we're filling each other in on our lives and the exciting things we have going on in these other areas. And that was kind of really the beginning of it. And then as the numbers are going up, the first time the original lineup of New Medicine got together in like 10 years was at Jake's wedding in Nashville. And that was a big moment where it was like, again, just 4 friends hanging out. And it was like, our lives we're growing as men, and like people are getting married, and Jake's getting married, and we're all doing this different stuff. And then it just was like, okay, like we're enjoying each other's company again. And there's a demand for this thing. So,
Yeah. I mean, for me, the way I look at it as well was there's no denying that our relationships in between the 4 of us we're friends. Yes. But we also have this like goal and this kind of like, there's this attachment to it, to our friendship. And it's a 2-way street. And I would feel all this pressure of being like, hey dude, we signed up to be on your like rocket ship, and if this rocket ship doesn't take off, I'm gonna be freaking pissed because like I just gave 5 years of my life to this, and I'm sitting there like, dude, I'm doing my best. I don't know why I just wrote the greatest song I've ever written, and this label doesn't do anything with it, you know what I mean? Like, and so of course when it doesn't work out, it's not like, oh great dude, see you next year. It's like, damn dude, like we just spent a lot of time doing it. And at first it's definitely like a feeling of defeat. And I'm sure the guys were probably thinking like, damn, dude, Jake bails on this after all this time. And for me, I was like, I can't believe I spent all this time and like it didn't work, and like I feel like I failed for my friends and my band, you know what I mean? And so it's like once the dust settled, and then we can just go back to like I started looking at the band and thinking like if nothing ever happens again with this band, I can still think back on those times and go, man, we played arenas, we got on the radio, I saw the entire world with my friends, and if it never happens again, I was cool with it at that point. And once I had that realization, I was like, you know what? If that never happens again, it happened, and I'm glad it happened. And we stopped having like this this obligation. It was just like we don't have to talk about the band. Like that's it. It already happened. So we don't have to like have this worry of like, well, what are we doing next? Or like, Jake, what do you got for us? Or me on the other hand of like, guys, can we go on this other tour? And like, we're not going to make any money, but trust me, it's going to work out. Like, we don't have to have those conversations anymore. It's just like, cool, man. We did the dream together. That was awesome. Like, we're just friends now. It's cool. We don't have this like to hold each other against, we don't have to hold each other accountable for some like business or something. And that really cleared the air. But I think it was like with Dan, I remember I started putting a few songs out. I did Fuck It and then Die Trying. And then Dan called me and was just like, dude, I would love to just, be part of whatever this is still. And like, I love what you're doing, the songs you're writing still. And like, maybe we could go do some shows and videos and however I can, still be part of the band and help. And I was like, hell yeah, dude. And if we wouldn't have had those years apart and wouldn't have had let the dust settle and like kind of resolve some of that, I don't think we would have as good of a relationship as we do now, because we were able to like kind of just rectify all that and just let it sit and go and just, deal with all that. And here we are. I think we're in a great position.
Well, it's interesting too, like when the hiatus happened and when you go another way. And yeah, there's that sense of defeat. And you're like, honestly, when I came to Hollywood and started being an actor, some people knew of the band, some people would find out about it. And I didn't want to be defined by that. It's, when an actor becomes a musician or a musician starts going into acting, it sort of is this thing where people, they see you through a certain lens. They're like, oh, well, you're a musician. You can't be good at this other thing or whatever. And it was like, I wanted to dissociate. I wanted to like not be that guy in the band. But then I had a realization. It was like, even if we weren't talking as much, or if we never did the band again or this or that, like when you have success at the level that we had it and you've done the things that we did, like there is a tether between Jake and I and this band that will be a part of my life for the rest of my life, whether I like it or not, because I'd go into certain auditions and people would recognize me. And it's like, even if you don't want anything to do with it, it's like, it's out in the world and people love it. And I had to just make peace with like, okay, even if we're not going to do this in the future, like this is a part of my life and I will always be tied to these guys because
it's like a marriage and kids.
It is. Yeah.
Like you're never going to get rid of it. It's like, it's always going to be with you,
Yeah. I mean, there was a time when I first moved to Hollywood where like all my guitars were in cases and things were put away because I didn't really want to see stuff. I didn't want to be that guy. I had to focus on this new path. Like I'm redefining who I am. And now, like, as I made peace with like, it is like a family. It is like a marriage. Now I have all these, I have our like that hand, like the Spotify plaques, and I have these pictures. These are all from like different big shows with Avenged or arenas or different big festivals we did. And I have my guitars out, and it's like, I can really like appreciate the past. And this is all before like this new wave of like success is happening and we're doing stuff again. But it was like, I like having these things around. I like being reminded of the past. It doesn't feel like every time I see a picture of us or hear about the band that I feel defeated. And it did for the first couple of years. Every time someone brought it up, it made me feel defeated. And I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to talk about all the experiences. And now it's like, I love doing it. And it's just icing on the cake that we're still doing it and that we're getting to do it again. And we're getting to go out and play shows for 10,000 people with like Disturbed and whatever. And that we have new music. Like I never expected that. My goal was like, I have to make peace with the past so that when it's brought up and when people recognize me for this thing, that I can just be really grateful for what we experienced. And I never thought we'd be doing it again, so it's such a blessing and so much fun.
Yeah. So you guys get back together then. And, start putting out, working together on videos for some of these songs. And like, I mean, is a full album put together yet, or like where are you guys
working
at
on it
with-
right now. Yeah. Yeah, working on it right now. I mean, I probably have like 5 or 6 new songs in different shape or form done, and then I've like have probably every time we do an album, I try to write 30 songs and pick 15. And I mean, like, so I've probably written 20 already, but I still think there's probably 3 or 4 songs I want to get, you know what I mean? Like, I wrote one a week and a half ago that I think is probably the best song I have so far for the record. And then Dan's going to come to Nashville and we're going to write. And the format of albums now, you know, we will put, probably Take Me Away will be on the album and stuff like that. Like, it's just a different, with digital and stuff, like, you don't have to like have months to go print CDs. Like, if we write a song tomorrow, we could have it recorded and like uploaded. So, but I just want to make sure, like, we have a standard, you know, we have a standard of like, wow, the first record, I feel like I can be proud of every song. And the second record, especially, I can go, wow, that is like my best work then. And I don't want any fat on the new record. And I want to write a bunch of songs. But yeah, I think Dangerous is done. There's another song, Past the Past, that's done. There's a song, Roll Like Us, from a while back that I have done. There's a new one called Never Know. There's another one called They Don't Know Me. So there's a bunch that are done, and I'm just they're in different forms of like, that one's 80% mixed or whatever. But I would say probably like May, June album, you know, but there'll be another single, I don't know, 6-8 weeks out from now. We're going to let Dangerous let people jam on Dangerous and see the video and kind of hear the new stuff. And then we'll have another
that video
song.
just dropped this week.
Yeah, it dropped yesterday.
Yesterday. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
well, I know I'm like a couple of the views on there, you know.
Yeah, man, it's done great. And yesterday it crushed on Spotify. We got a bunch of great looks on Pandora, and yeah, it's really fun. And I think it's a cool new sound for us. And just, we've always never fit in with any like traditional format. No one ever knows like, oh, should we put them on Warped Tour or like Ozfest? I don't know. They're kind of in between. And it's like, we've always been there and we still are. And I love it because who cares about fitting into formats? And so I think this Dangerous is one of our coolest sonically and songwriting wise, and just, I don't know. And then the video, I mean, like, Dan came up with that concept and of the kind of 70s cop duo, and I think it perfectly fits the song. It's awesome.
I mean,
Yeah, the video, I enjoyed the opening too. It's just like, you know, you guys been on a hiatus, like you're monks, you know.
Yeah,
up
exactly.
in the monastery, like Batman, you know, in training, and then
Exactly. I mean, you can recall.
Dan's
it's
like a
funny.
ninja on the nunchucks and everything, you know.
Yeah,
Couple
like,
idiots.
so we talked about kind of conceptually a song like, okay, Race You to the, like, all these songs are very new sounding that are coming out that Jake's doing, and it's like, but we still do have a past and we're proud of that past. And so it's like, well, part of Race You to the Bottom in the past is we're like a party. We have some partying and some danger in our music and kind of this Beastie Boys sort of vibe in there. And we've been talking about a song and kind of throwing it back, something that sounds new and is new for our sound, but also like pays homage to ourselves, pays homage to the Race You to the Bottom, the when we were younger and just kids partying on tour. Like, obviously Jake's married now and we're like in our 30s, and it's like, but we still have that fire that we had when we were kids. And so Jake comes up with his track, sends it over, and I'm like, this is awesome. You know, like, it's so fun. There's so much like ego in it, and it's so good. And it's just like, it's so much of the old us, but also it's very much like the new stuff that New Medicine's doing. And I had a bad cold like a month ago at the beginning of the year, and he had just sent me like early mixes of the track. And I go to this Thai food restaurant in downtown LA. I love soup that they have there when I'm sick. So I walk in to get soup, and like, they forgot my order. So they started making it when I get there, and I sit down and Bruce Lee Game of Death is playing on the screen. So I sit there for like 10 or 15 minutes watching this Bruce Lee movie. And I'm like, I mean, I liked this stuff as a kid, but it had been a while, and I'm such a big film guy. I'm like, this is awesome. And so I go home, and the next 3 days that I'm like sick, I'm laying in bed and all I do is watch Bruce Lee stuff. And that was where the video, and then I'm listening to this song that Jake sent me, and I'm like, this is okay, this is it. Like that was my ticket into the concept, was like, there's got to be karate, there's got to be kung fu in this thing, because that's dangerous. And then, you know, like I personally meditate a lot. I think meditating like makes a man like truly dangerous, like badass in a really good way, you know, when you can like center yourself. And the fact that we'd been away and this was kind of, we're coming back. And so it was like, yeah, we've been away in this monastery and we come back. And then obviously like growing up an MTV kid, Sabotage is such an iconic video. And you always want, you're like, it kind of has a little bit of a Beastie Boy sound in the song. It's got this kung fu element in Bruce Lee. And I'm like, and I've always wanted to kind of do a Sabotage type video. And now like where I live, you know, 5 minutes from downtown LA. It's like the perfect backdrop, right? Like there's just locations. You can just drive around and roll a camera, and it's interesting because we grew up in in a farm in Minnesota. And now it's like Los Angeles is my backyard. I can hear the helicopters and the 101 right here. And so, yeah, so I was just like, that's it. And then we recruited our old friend Strati, who we met on that first Uproar tour. He was like filming all the tour, and he goes out with Slipknot and all these bands. And I always wanted to work with him. And I was like, let's hit up Strati. Let's do this crazy idea. We'll put on wigs. We'll wear mustaches. I was like hitting up my stunt fighter friends. I was like, we're going to choreograph all this kung fu and all this stuff. And like
bringing the bell bottoms back.
Yeah. I had no idea. I was like in my head, love to see it. Love to see it, Jake.
You love seeing it.
Love seeing it. I just had this weird idea in my head. And the whole time I'm just thinking, I might just be insane. Like we're going to be running around with a car and bell bottoms doing kung fu in downtown LA. Like everyone's going to put me in an institution. They're going to think I'm having a meltdown. And somehow it was so fun. It was so smooth. And it happened so fast. We shot this thing 2 weeks ago, you know, whatever, 2-3 weeks ago. It was just like, again,
and it looks fun, you know, and it's like, you know, the song is fun. So it's just like, I'm having fun watching it. That's why I watched it like, you know, 4 or 5 times already. And then, like I said, it led me down like the rabbit hole of some of your past music videos. And like, I enjoyed the video for Fuck It with the Night at the Roxbury type thing you guys did there too. And it's just like, you guys just got great chemistry. You can tell,
it's fun
that you've been, you know, friends and worked together for a long time. But it's, you know, I definitely highly recommend, you know, the fans to go check out your YouTube channel and go check out those videos, because it's just I don't know. Were you guys familiar with Family Force 5?
Yep. I remember that band.
Yeah. I mean, I used to see them quite a bit too. And like their music, you know, I get that vibe with some of your guys' music as well. Like just fun party, like, you know, type energy I get from it, you know.
Totally.
I just noticed the text from Jake. Texted me at 8:55 my time and said, "See you on the podcast." More like, you know, "Are you awake, you asshole?"
Yeah. Make sure you're up and on time.
That's hilarious. It's you know, your friends, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
But you know, and then speaking of, you mentioned One Too Many too. I remember, you know, I enjoyed that video as well. But I know it's something like, you know, that we can relate to, you know, on a whole nother level, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like
that guy being there, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like we were I mean, at least me and some of the guys in the band were partiers when we were young. You know, Race You to the Bottom. I mean, is like being on the road, you know, there was definitely like drinking and excess and a lot of like partying and stuff like that. But by the time we were in the second record, I had quit all that. You know, I'd gotten sober, and Jake and our friend Carl, who we went to high school with, they had this song titled One Too Many. And in, you know, in my life, I can relate to that, right? Like one's too many, 1,000's never enough. So it was just like, there's little there's a maturity that happened on the second album, and there's definitely some influence of like I was living differently. There's a song called All About Me that I really love on that record because I, that, and then like, yeah, and One Too Many, it says like, talks about making amends, talks about, it just was like, in perspective, there were a lot of nights we had one too many. I mean, there were nights on the road where, drinking too much, I've gotten fights on the road, like all of those kind of stories are real. And that's just the song that was like, yeah, man, we went hard. We went hard when we were young. And Jake was actually, it's crazy because usually you think like, oh, the singer's the craziest one, always getting in shit. And it was more like he was always bailing us out of shit, like he was always the most driven and focused, and we'd be like partying, getting in fights or whatever. And he'd be like, let's get the hell out of here, dude. What are you doing?
Yeah.
So I do love that song.
Definitely says a lot about the quality of your guys' relationship though over the years too, because it's like, I mean, we know how me and you connected, Dan, and how we've become friends, over the past couple of years. But
for sure,
for Jake to have the relationship he has with you and to stick with you through the ups and downs, and now like here you guys are working together again, on the new stuff, and it just seems like you guys definitely have a good thing going, and I'm looking forward to what the future holds, and like what are kind of like the goals that you have in mind going forwd.
I'll let Jake answer that, but real quick, I just want to say I'm super blessed because like from the day I met Jake, I had always dealt with addiction issues, and he has watched me change and go through and get sober and fall down and get back up, and to have somebody stand by you and like support you in that is pretty amazing. Now he's going to talk about the plans for the future.
Yeah, well, you got to show people grace, and I know Dan's got a great heart, and we've had good and bad times. We've not always, we've fought in the past, but to me and my family, or how I was raised, it was just like, yeah, we fight, but the next day you wake up and say, all right, I still love you. Let's figure this out. And so that's kind of always been my attitude. And Dan is like family. So it's just, that's how we treat family. But, yeah, the plans, man, I think it's just going to be, the sky's the damn limit for us. I mean, dude, we're going to just keep putting music out. Like I say album May, June, but I'm never going to stop putting music out until people stop listening to us, you know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm so inspired right now. So more videos, more music. You're going to see us on tour this year. We keep tossing around different ideas of when and where to go on tour, but the fans want it. And I've been waiting for, like, all these other bigger bands have been saying, like, well, bigger now. I don't know. We're not so small ourselves. But all these we wait around for some bigger bands to say, oh, we were going to do a tour in the spring, or maybe we should go on tour with X band or X band. And I'm starting to just be like, we're just going to go do our own tour because we have 200 million streams. And there's a lot of people that just keep messaging me every day saying, come to Cleveland, come to Cincinnati, come to Spokane, Washington, when are you coming back to Grand Rapids, Michigan? And we're going to do it. We owe it to the fans, the people listening to our music. And I think there's like a disconnect of like these passive listeners that are like, oh, I know Fire Up the Night, but like, who are those people? And it's like, wow, we want to get back out there and say, it's us. We're the band. That's us singing that. Like I do these TikToks and I'll be like, people don't realize this is me singing that song. And they're like, what? I love that song. You're the singer? I'm like, yeah, that's me, whatever. And so, yeah, we want to get back out there on the road. Like I said, hopefully we won't be sleeping in Walmart parking lots anymore. And but as long as that's the case, yeah, we're gonna get back on the road, and yeah, more fun videos, more music, and just really excited and really excited for the future.
Nice. I'm one of those guys that want you to come to Cleveland as well. So,
yeah, we'd love to.
Hopefully, you can make it happen. Now, we're approaching on the almost like 2 hours, man. We've been on here talking and stuff, and I wanted to make sure that you guys had an opportunity to talk about a future video or a video that's been in the works? Because I know, Dan's usually, in front of the camera, and has all that experience. But now talk about what you guys got planned for Dan behind the camera.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can just say that the song "Take Me Away" is just blown up on TikTok, on Spotify, every platform people are able to hear that on, because I think of the lyrics, because I think the lyrics are resonating with people. It's about mental health and how I was struggling with my mental health and how constant comparisons and stuff in my head and never feeling good enough and blah, blah, blah. And so that song really, really resonated. And then Dan had this concept for a video, and we had talked to a bunch of different directors, and everyone's kind of like, man, I don't know if we can do it for that budget. And we're independent, I'm like, we're not made of money. And we're just like, we're trying to do it punk rock. And finally we were coming out to LA to do the Dangerous video. And Dan was like, dude, I'm just going to direct this thing. And so we just shot a video for it. And Dan, you can talk a little bit more about it and
I think
stuff. And
I think we're going to be doing a lot of videos. Like I said, I'm very visual, been acting my whole life, and now like working on films, and especially in that time during the pandemic, where there wasn't a lot of work for a lot of actors. So I started spending a lot of time behind the camera as well, and enjoying that, and learning editing and directing and things like that. And I study film. So, we have concepts for a ton of videos that we're going to be doing, and I'm excited about that. But this one, I've always been involved in making the videos and coming up with ideas. Even the Race You to the Bottom video, that was, we had a whole different concept, and then me and the director changed it a couple of days before, and it was the most fun we'd had. And then there's there's a song called American Wasted, where I made, when I first got sober, I made action figures. Like I would go to Toys R Us and I made action figures of us. And then I was like, let's make a video of action figures of us. And so I've always been there, but I never really felt like I could step up to the plate and be like, I'm going to direct this one, even though I was really kind of shadow, like producing and directing, but I didn't have the confidence. And this time I was like, you know what, like I'm going to do it. So I loved Take Me Away. I love that song. I can relate to all of that. And I came up with this crazy concept of like, I was just listening to the song and I'm like, what if there was just an anxiety clinic? You could just walk in and for $25, they fix all your problems, no more emotions, no more anxiety. And they just, it's like a lobotomy or whatever. And I just thought it'd be funny to shoot a video of like, me giving Jake basically a lobotomy to solve all of his problems. So we were going to shoot actually a different video, but it had been raining for like a week and a half, 2 weeks straight in California. Jake's already got flights. We've got hotels. We got all this stuff. And I'm freaking out. I'm thinking like, we have 2 videos that we have on the books to shoot outside, and it has rained every day for 2 weeks. And it says it's going to rain all week. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be a wash. So I switched to this concept. I was like, okay, at least we can shoot this indoors and I'll direct it and we'll do it. And I threw it together in, 2 days, and had to build my garage into a hospital room and get a cinematographer. And we just kind of pulled an audible and we shot Dangerous. And we literally had like from 9 to 5 PM on the day where there wasn't rain. It was cloudy all day. We didn't know. Everyone was worried about rain. We shot Dangerous. Then that night I built the set, and then the next day we shot Take Me Away. And it was raining outside, and we were, in the set, and we shot that. I'm super excited about it. That one's done. So that'll be the next video, but we've got just concepts and ideas, and we're going to shoot a lot more videos because we really have a way of doing it where we don't have to, we can really be resourceful about it, and we can more concept driven and do cool stuff without having to spend $30,000 or $50,000 and do all this crazy stuff. There's so much talent in LA, and I've gotten connected with people through my acting stuff. And like the biggest thing for me now with the band, especially the videos and everything, like you said, is like, we've got to have fun doing it. Because there were times when you're in the business and you're playing arenas and all this stuff where it's just like, you lose the fun of it. And so that energy of why we started and why we loved it and why we're doing it is really, I'm feeling that energy when we're working on these videos. We're like truly having fun. And I think that'll come through. Viewers because like Take Me Away is a heavy song, but I think it's really fun to watch it. It's a fun concept and a fun video because we're having so much fun making it. So
Right.
I'm looking forward to hearing that one for sure, because I can totally relate as well to the concept that you laid out, Jake, with the not feeling good enough and the comparison thing. I mean, that was part of what my lead was last night. And it's a part of my story. It's still, it's like that my drug and alcohol use were but a symptom of my deeper rooted mental health issues. And now that with years of when I'm not numbing, it's like I got to get into the roots and feel things. And why do I feel why do some feelings get elevated? Why do some feelings take me so far down? And you got to get dirty and dig in and start working on that mental health aspect. And that's been a part of my journey, and it definitely is something that I think will relate to many people,
And I think in that concept too, that's like what we're saying is like, yeah, what if in this world you could go pay $50 and someone cuts a piece of your brain out and you have no more problems, but it's not in any way like taking light of mental health, but it's also like you got to feel your shit. Like that
Right.
isn't an actual solution to go and just remove it. Like
it's like the pills they want to throw at you,
Right.
It's
Exactly.
like you really got to get to a place where you can sit with your feelings and sort of explore them, because it makes you stronger, helps you move forward, and it helps you deal with life on life's terms, which is hard to do. And there's so many, I mean, that it kicks back to the band name of New Medicine, of like, music was our medicine as kids. Like we grew up, around, there was like a lot of overdoses and suicides. Jake and I in high school were going to a lot of funerals where like this has been a part of our life, and music was the thing that, it was the only thing that kept me out of getting into my addiction to a point where like I ended up in jail or dead. And there were times I was close still, but if I hadn't had the band and had the music as a medicine, 100%, that was where I was going. And so, it's a super cool video. And I think it like, it's important as a filmmaker and as creative people to like hold the mirror up to society and like shine a light into things people don't want to look at, people don't want to talk about or acknowledge. And it's like, dude, this is a real thing. We've all been isolated for years. We are struggling, and we got to look at that, and we got to talk about it and help each other out, and not stigmatize it or try to band-aid it with, a medication or drugs or whatever, vices are out there.
For sure. For sure.
Amen, man. Well, guys, man, I appreciate, this has been some, therapeutic and medicine for me, getting to talk through all this stuff with you guys, and to realize, that, we're not alone. We like to think we're unique in some of our, I guess, mental illness and stuff like that. But, we just all finding other ways to uplift each other.
I like to say it this way. I think we're all unique, but our problems are not unique.
True.
I believe everybody's unique, and we are individuals and we're different, but like we all share a lot of common problems. Those are not unique. So we can be different from each other, but we need to relate over the issues that we struggle with as humans,
Totally.
Amen. Yeah. So, but for any of the audience out there that may not be familiar with New Medicine and some of your guys' work, where would you send them to check it out?
All of our stuff is like YouTube, New Medicine Rock, Instagram, New Medicine Rock, Facebook, just New Medicine, and Twitter, New Medicine, and TikTok, New Medicine Rock. And so all those kind of spots, you'll see us on there, and a lot more music coming. And then hopefully look for us on the road this summer somewhere in your town, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so, man.
Yeah.
Well, man, thanks a lot for taking the time, Dan. Thanks for helping
Absolutely.
set this up, buddy. And we'll definitely be in touch. And Jake, man, good getting to know you. I'll definitely
Absolutely,
be,
Bill.
Keeping in touch with you as well. We have a brother in your area that I think maybe you could connect with for some music stuff as well. So
awesome.
I'll try and get you guys connected.
Badass, man. Thanks for having us on here and giving us a platform for our music, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thank you.
Dan,
guys.
go get some sleep.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I got to stay up and get on a regular schedule. So thank you guys for pulling. Like, I've been in the editing room till 3, 4 in the morning for a week finishing that video, and it's just I do not want to be an editor. I'll direct, but I'm hiring an editor next time because it makes you crazy.
Yeah.
You're just sitting in a dark room for days. It's crazy. It's probably like what you go through in the studio.
Yeah.
And I never loved that. You know, Jake will be in the studio for hours, and I'm just like, I got to go run or like
do something.
do something.
Gotcha. All right, guys.
Well,
Thank
cheers,
you,
brother. Thanks for having us. See you soon, brother.